Hello, Doctor Who fans, wherever you are, and welcome to another fabulous podcast from Who Corner to Corner. My name is Paul. I am joined by my good friend Jeff, and we also have another very special celebrity guest in our studio today. This is Mr. Arwel Wyn Jones, production designer, set decorator extraordinaire from the Doctor Who world, and also Sarah Jane Adventures and Sherlock. Hello, Arwel. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you very much. I should get you to introduce me everywhere.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah,
do you know
I'm
what?
Quite cheap, don't worry about it.
Oh, well, you're not the first person to say that to Paul. He could make a second career out of being, entering buildings before people to announce them. Perhaps
Mate, this is what I do myself.
Yeah.
When I go into a room, this is how I announce myself, usually with a theme tune playing in the background, which might or might not be Doctor Who related. So there we go. So, Arwel, how are you today, sir? Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your busy day. So, Arwel, we've got a whole bunch of questions here from ourselves. We have put our brains together, but we've also invited the brain power of the Twitterverse, if you like.
God.
So we've had a bunch of people chip in with various questions, some of which you might have seen, so we'll throw some of those at you. But let's start with the first one here. Let's take us back to the beginning, if you will, and tell us, how did the job of Doctor Who production designer come your way?
Well, production designer element of it was just for Jodie's first year. I had been involved a few years back, right from Christopher Eccleston's first stint. I was actually involved as a standby art director on episodes 2 and 3 of that series, and a few more after that. But I recall I was working on a film in Belgium at the time, and I was told that they were interviewing for production designers in Cardiff, and I made arrangements to come back. And on that day, we had a bit of a to-do on set that I had to go back and sort it out. So obviously the job you're on at the moment has to take precedence over everything else. Yeah. So I kind of apologised profusely and thought, right, that's it. I've lost that opportunity. Blown it, yes. But the following day I was flying to the Isle of Man, where we were doing the other half of the film. And in all fairness to Chris and Matt, they went, well, let's do it over Zoom tomorrow then. I literally found as quiet a corner as you can find in London Airport. And did it over Zoom. We're very similar to this, actually.
Right. Oh, really?
Yes. Yes, and literally, I must have said a few of the right things at the time, and then anyway, they offered me the job.
Brilliant.
So they were quite impressed. I mean, obviously, like you said, you'd had a history before then, hadn't you? You've done,
yes,
worked on Doctor Who and various other things before then.
Yes.
So when did you start with the whole art design for film and TV?
Back a very long time ago now. Someone asked me last year how long I've been doing this, and I shocked and saddened myself when I realised it was 30 years last year ago, January. So in some form or other, yes. I just loved film and television from when I was a kid. I used to love Saturday morning films. I used to watch the old serials on TV, the Zorro and the Lone Ranger and stuff. And, I get shouted at by my parents for being square-eyed and not, but that was my passion.
Yeah.
And then in 1982, S4C was launched in Wales, Welsh language channel. So there was a lot of opportunities and stuff that happened, and they were shooting a period show around the area I grew up in, and they needed some kids, and they chose me as one of the kind of background action kids kind of thing. So I was in, I think, 5 out of 6 episodes, but it kind of gave me an insight as to how these things were made. I grew up on a farm in North Wales. Generally, you had no idea of this kind of world. Fast forward 7 or 9 years later, having messed about in school, not done very well in my A-levels and stuff, and gone and worked in various industries, kind of went, right, actually, what do I want to do? And I went, I want to work in film and TV. So I sat down with a list of independent companies and phoned them until someone gave me a job, and started as a runner and worked my way up.
Yeah, I did that in my early days. I run a little video company now, and I remember walking around. This is going to sound all sorts of wrong, but walking around Soho, giving people my CV, but like knocking on doors. And I think for people today, there were so many more opportunities, and it's easier in some ways, I think, isn't it? Oh well,
it's easier, but also at the same time, it's a very tough industry to get your foot in the door. And this is what I always say to people when they're asking me: is that make the most of every single little scrap of opportunity you get.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things we try and endeavour to do. Always, my other departments is that we try and give work experience to people for 2 to 3 weeks at least. Give them enough time to kind of get to know people, and for us to get to know them.
Yeah.
And if we remember them, they're more likely to be the people we'll ring for a day's work or something, paid a day then, and then that could lead to a week, and that could lead to further employment. And there's at least, I've just finished a job now, and there was at least 2 of my team, if not 3, of the overall team on that have come to us that way.
Yeah, but you're right. Take every opportunity and seize it, because for that individual, showing that commitment and effort and passion, it could reward them.
And it works both ways. I've had people given an opportunity I would have killed for when I was their age, and they've squandered it. And so you want to be remembered for the right things.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. When I was on work experience, I'd be going around going, "What do you do? What does this do? Can I help you? What's this?" Blah blah blah.
Exactly.
And then when I started,
I help you is the most important thing. Be willing. Be willing to do whatever it takes.
That's it, yeah. I remember having a lad on work experience once for me, and he was sitting in the corner on his phone or whatever, and I said, "Why don't you go and ask the camera guys what they're doing, and go and chat to them." "I'm all right here." And I thought, well, you're not coming back tomorrow, so we made an excuse, and we don't need you tomorrow.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. You're not helping us, but you're also not helping yourself. So I don't have to.
And that's what you remember, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, well, let's stick to your origin with things for a little bit. So, how do your designs begin? Do you get input from creators and develop them, or do you kind of
Generally, with Doctor Who it's slightly different, but generally it all starts with a script, right? So a script arrives on my desk, and I look at it as a collection of problems to solve. And then you solve them so if you look at sometimes if you look at it as a whole, it's overwhelming. You don't know, oh my God. So you break it down into the problems that need to be solved. And then you try and introduce a design ethic to that process as you're doing it. With Doctor Who, it's, things like when I got told I was doing Jodie's, I was immediately starting to think about the TARDIS, for example, because I knew that needed to be done. The same with the Sonic, before I got a script, because I knew that these were staples that we needed to do.
Yeah.
The same was true of Dracula's Castle, even though I did get a snippet of Stephen's script very early on for the entrance hall and stuff. So, it is, generally speaking, 99.9% of the time it comes from the script, because everything stems from that Bible.
Yeah.
And as you read the script, are you then already thinking what this is going to look like, who needs to operate it, what its confines need to be?
Yeah, it needs to serve the story. Whatever you do, it needs to serve the story, it needs to serve the script. And also, if you can embellish it and add to that and add to it visually, then great. Because I've always had this theory, and you've got to be careful. But, all the great storytellers embellish stories slightly, but the trick is not going too far, so it becomes unrealistic. I've been lucky when a lot of shows that I've worked on have been hyper-real or even complete fantasy, so you're allowed to go that little bit extra and be that little bit more eccentric with your designs, I suppose. But in general, it's like my use of wallpapers has been quite widely seen. It's like, for example, let's use the 2-to-1B set as no one would really live somewhere that looks like that. But for us, for a television show, it gave us textures and a look and feel that was very recognisable, but also interesting textures in the background of most directions you pointed a camera, if not all.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you what as well, I mean, just there are 3 cultural icons that you talked about in just a few minutes there.
I just made
Dracula's Castle.
Yeah, I just made a note to say, probably beating you to it.
Let's do it now, right? Dracula's Castle, Sherlock Holmes' apartment, and the TARDIS. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
How does it feel? Yeah, how does it feel to tackle, such iconic locations and to kind of make your, interpretation of them? Does it scare you?
It's very much an honour, but you are scared witless, because you know, like you say, they're iconic, and they're also got a very, very, very strong, opinionated fan base on all three of those elements.
Yeah.
And you've just got to take. You'll have to have some reverence for the source material, obviously, but you've also got to just go, right, this is what I'd like to do, and go with it.
Yeah, because otherwise
you can't pander to everyone anyway. Because no matter what you do, you will not please everyone. And that's an important thing to kind of accept quite early on. And there's things with 221B, for example, where it's very easy to fall into the trap of going down the same things, because there's a lot of description in the books, and there's various, and they're contradictory as well. So, with that one, it was like, yes, it has to have a certain element to it, but you don't want it to fall into the trap of just copying everything else. So what was quite nice with that one for me was, once we'd done the modern day one, I was then able to do a Victorian version of mine, as it were, rather than it the other way around, of doing a modern day version of a Victorian one that already existed. So it kind of worked in my favour there.
Yeah, that's good.
With Dracula's Castle, it was, especially with the Hammer ones, due to budgetary restrictions that they had, you quite often had a big old wide shot of this magnificent castle, and then you'd go through this fantastic, and then you'd go through this fantastic entranceway, and then you'd be in a little interior somewhere. So I really, really wanted to give that expansive, massive kind of wow factor to that first entrance.
Oh, it certainly had that.
With the big spiral staircase. That wasn't in the original. I kind of made that hallway and dining room kind of fit together so that it was warranted building it, so that the actual page count covered being in there, as it were. And then the TARDIS was another one where I'd had these ideas about playing with crystals, and also sometimes it's good to have this play with not reality, because it's not reality, but just to give you a little anchor point somewhere. And I was reading about time crystals. You just literally go, right, I'm going to type time crystals into Google, and then
Google, see what comes up.
Yeah, and it came up. I can't remember exactly where I found it now, and I'm not in any way a physicist, so I couldn't tell you how this. But I found that there was such a thing as time crystals that were created in a lab, and inside these crystals, time existed differently to what we know. So it was like, well, that's all I needed, really. That's it. There was such a thing as a time crystal. That's enough. I'm going to go with it. So I was thinking, in the same way as you manipulate metal within a magnetic field, you can either create electricity, or I thought, if you manipulate a time crystal within a time vortex, you can move through time and space. So that was my kind of idea behind the whole thing. So that moving of the crystal in the center of the console was that. And then, in theory, I suppose the original idea was that those fingers around moved with it, and then that you slightly tilt the crystal in whichever direction or whatever. The fingers proved to be way too noisy for dialogue and everything, so we froze them very, very soon in the process.
Oh, I love that. Well, we'll come back to the TARDIS and Who in a moment, but we've got a question from Susanna Easton through Twitter, and she's a production designer, does sort of music videos and things like that. So two questions really from her. Did you always want to be a production designer? Because you talked about how you did a bit of background extra work and things, and kind of discovered TV and film. So what led to the you getting into production design? And she also wondered who are your favourite designers as well. So I've thrown two at you there.
See, my favourite designers vary, I suppose. It's a weird one. Yes. But the way I actually didn't know what I wanted to do when I started. I started out as a runner, like I said, and I probably in my head thought, I'd like to direct, because I'd like to be the boss. But with my background of having grown up on a farm where you turn your hand to most things, I found that on a small production in Wales, I was helping out the art department a lot. To the point where, even as a runner, they would go off on dress sets and leave me with the props, for example. So after a couple of years of doing this, I was like, well, I'm a bit bored of making teas and copies and running after people. I asked whether they would take me on as a trainee prop man. And the designer went, actually, I'd quite like you as an assistant. So I kind of leapfrogged straight to being an assistant with him for a while. And I was with him for a few years. and he gave me a great grounding. But it was very difficult for me then to move on because I had no degree in design or art, and a lot of designers wouldn't give me the time of day because of that, So it kind of forced my hand into designing myself on very low budget things, or some mobisodes and stuff for the internet was starting out at that time. Along with some commercials and stuff in Cardiff that I did. And then through that, I started designing for S4C for a couple of shows there. Then I went back to art direct for a feature film with a very good designer in Hayden Pearce in Cardiff, and was working with him on a show when I got a call about Doctor Who and whether I'd go and consider being standby art director. And I just thought, why not?
Why not?
Because of my experience already, having been leading my own team and stuff, within 2 years of there, I was supervising art director, and also then kind of made it very easy for me to go on and design Sarah Jane Adventures, or I was an easy choice for the producers of Sarah Jane to go, all right, well, he can lead a team. So it was through all of those things, really, having done a little bit and then gone on to a bigger show and then gone back to it kind of.
You can see it in your list of credits how you've kind of moved up the ranks with things as well, and that's quite interesting what you said there about you didn't have kind of formal training in it, but because I just did a talk, I told you about this, Paul, did a talk at the local college, and it was about kind of getting into the industry and stuff like that. And the tutors are like, do you recommend the students go to university or just go straight out? And I went...
I can imagine what your answer was there, Jeff.
I said, well, my uni was rubbish.
Yeah.
But I think
it's a contentious issue at the moment, who do you want to go and do yes, you learn a lot, and there's some really good courses out there that give you incredible grounding and incredible skills, but also you end up with a big old debt to deal with, right, as you're starting out in your... for me, I could possibly have started a bit earlier by going straight into industry, but also I might not have had the breaks I got at the same time. I think there's a lot more to be said about being trained in the job these days. Apprenticeships are making a much bigger comeback to where they were.
That's kind of
being
what I
taught
think.
by people with experience, not losing that experience as people retire.
Yeah.
All of that is quite interesting. So I think there's pros and cons both. If you can combine the both, it's probably the best bet, And like I said, these work experience placements and traineeships we try and do now, so that people quite often come via colleges for these spots. But I'm also keen on trying to find the people. It's an odd one, people that are already in college are kind of in the top 2% of the population in regards to, quite often in regards to means as well as everything else. So it's a very varied department, the art department. There's I've been to some quite deprived areas in the South Wales Valleys to talk about it in schools, and asked who in that out of the few that came to listen to me, who they would think about coming into my industry, and no hands came up, and then you start going, well, how many would like to be an electrician, a carpenter, a hairdresser, who likes photography, and you list all these kind of different things, and then by the end I would have like maybe 75-80% of the hands up. And I go, all of these roles exist in my industry, but they had no idea, but also they don't have a pathway in. So that's the critical part for me now, is that there's a lot that of 16-year-olds that leave school that in South Wales, the film and TV industry is the only real growing industry. And these people, the majority of these people that live in the valleys and live in the more deprived areas of Cardiff have no pathway into our industry. So it's trying to discover how we get to these people and how we get to them in time. And say, right, have a look at this, because we need, at the current rate of growth, I think I read somewhere, we need somewhere in the region of 200,000 more staff in the next 5 years,
Wow. It's exciting, though, that it's growing.
It's fantastic,
like that.
But equally, we need to make sure that everyone gets a bite of the apple. And, it's accessible to everyone, especially to people where it's on their doorstep.
Yeah.
I think I read in Doctor Who magazine that Bad Wolf Studios are now opening, inviting classes, inviting kids in to kind of show them the opportunities and what they can do.
Bad Wolf and Screen Skills Wales have been doing it for a while. They've been doing quite well, and we also, on the show I've just finished, Black Egg, we did a couple of things like that. We also held an open day down in Cardiff Bay to try and show again, people, and then we had somewhere in the region of 24 trainees on the show, which was for the whole duration of the filming, which was phenomenal, I thought. And I would say that 90%, 95% of those will probably go and work in the industry. They were all brilliant and really engaged.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So, how does it actually work, making a set, in terms of, obviously you've designed it, but then how do you get it built and how do you dress it? So obviously some things are everyday items, but some things you need to get, I haven't seen any time crystals lying around, for example.
They've got to be made. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you depends where you go. They line about everywhere in South Wales.
Mostly in Wales, yeah.
A lot of quarries in Wales. That once again, it's the team you have around you. So you have construction, you have fabricators for props, and the fabricators for props will go from things as small as a sonic or something smaller that fits in your hand, all the way to those crystals and to the console itself. Those kind of things will be fabricated as opposed to built in a traditional way of a set. So you design it and then you break it down and then you go to your choice of people to fulfill those different things that are needed, and then you tend to need a very, very good set decorator then to help you with the acquiring of all the dressing and all the elements that go on top, then to actually make the whole thing come alive.
Yeah, put it together.
And that's where the details are, isn't it? Those are the things, for me, that makes a difference. You're watching these things now in sort of 4K, massive high resolution, and anything you can't. It must be more difficult to fudge something. There's got to be more intricacy.
You say that, but then it's still not. You're still your eyes. It's your eyes. Your eyesight is what sees the television that you're watching the show on. So if it's good to your eyes when you're doing it, which should be the standard you work to, really. If you're working to a standard that is sub what you look at, then you're asking for trouble. And that was even, in the days of standard definition before HD, we did used to laugh about something. If something wasn't quite what you wanted, you'd go, "No, I'll be all right." I was waving my fingers in front of my face then, the podcast guys. But in all honesty, I remember the panic about HD coming out, let alone 4K. There is no panic so long as it looks good to you. It's not going to be any worse.
You're right. The Ks in the TVs and the cameras and stuff might be increasing, but our eyes aren't. They're not getting any better as we get older.
But you're talking about Doctor Who fans now, and we are well known for freeze framing and blowing up everything to look at the minus detail, so we can figure out what's going to happen in the next series or something. You're not dealing with ordinary people here.
No, no, I'm well aware of this. Believe you me, you're well aware of this.
Yes, I can imagine.
Let's go back to Doctor Who for a little bit. So, anyone who listens to our podcast regularly may remember that my personal absolute favourite moment in all of Doctor Who.
Yes, it is
from the Ghost.
You have told us this.
From the Ghost Monument, when the TARDIS reappears and Jodie walks up to it and she goes in. And we see the interior for the first time with her.
The lights just coming in.
I'm not afraid to admit that when I watched it, I was on my own at home and I cried with joy at the beauty of it. And then the next morning, I said to my son, who was probably 5 at the time, I said, I've got to show you this. And I showed him. And I sat there crying again at how amazing it was. And he went, "It's really big." Like this.
Oh really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So and he was interested in the small box and the big inside. And, he started asking questions, and I've got twin girls as well, and they've seen bits of it as well, and they know that Jodie's the Doctor. Whenever they see one of the male doctors, they go, "Who's this?" I say, "It's Doctor Who." Doctor Who's a girl. So they've got no concept really.
That's brilliant. The flip of it, that's fantastic, isn't it?
So that
was one of the joys of being involved in this season. Was just playing with those things and with those prejudices and stuff. But that reveal, weirdly, one of my favourite shots, you can't even see the console in it, is that low angle of her coming through the door, where it does give it quite an epic scale, the outer walls and stuff.
Yeah, it all starts to light up.
And I'm going to have my little moment now, right? This is it.
Do it.
Go on, go for it.
When I was watching the making of The Mandalorian and I saw the volume screens for the first time.
Oh, yes.
I was kicking the wall, right? Because that was the original idea that I had for the TARDIS, was I was going to go the entire way all the way around the outside. That's why there's holes in it, you can see through.
Yeah.
We went with darkness for most of the end, but the idea was that you would be able to, that it was infinite and the time vortex was out there. So that it was truly infinite and bigger on the inside.
Wow.
But obviously I was working for the BBC, not for so I had to settle for 5 screens dotted around would give you an idea of it rather than the full 360.
Wow.
Do you know, it's if any of you say that, because that would have been like, an epic visual, but in that game they made, it's Edge of Time, I think they've done similar when you go into the TARDIS and you can kind of see things through the the walls of it, so there's a bit of that idea there as well. So tell us a bit more about the inspiration for the TARDIS interior. You talked about the time crystal. Did Chris have any thoughts that he relayed to you?
Well, obviously, I pitched ideas in a mood board to them first, and then at different stages throughout, kind of developed the idea and kind of carried on. And that lattice work on the outside was once again that idea of containing this power. So it was kind of an idea like similar to a Faraday cage, I suppose. If you were floating this thing inside a time vortex, you had to protect it somewhat. So it was all toying with all these different ideas. And I was lucky enough to have been invited along to see them shoot the Jodie parts of the regeneration in the old house.
Yeah.
And I brought along some bits and bobs with me that day just to look at how we would look within that space, as it were. So I had this idea of an infinity mirror, once again, trying to give that idea of something bigger from something that looks flat. And, there's been various nice moments where the cameras track through what is obviously a 2-dimensional wall, and then you see that depth through, and then we've played with pulling things out, to give that idea. But just to do practical effects is always not quite nice, to do things practically within a set that then still toys with your preconceptions a little bit.
Yeah, it's great. There's just so many little things in the set, like the way you come in through the TARDIS doors, and it's like the box stuck onto
that was more to do with my time as a standby art director, kind of where the amount of times that we could see the side of the box if we're not shooting straight at the box and stuff. And I kind of there used to be sliding doors, so you never had, it was like an extra set of doors on the older TARDIS.
Yeah.
So for me it was like, right, rather than it being the front door immediately, why don't we just put the box, and it's the back wall that is the actual, and then you can see the sides of the box as you're walking in, and you only got to put something in the back, and it just eased our pain enormously, and also it actually made it
kind
look
of makes
quite
sense.
nice as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a nice touch. Yeah,
it does, mate. I mean, I tell you what I really love about this, because the whole selling point of the TARDIS is that whole idea of it being infinitely bigger on the inside, isn't it, than the outside, and that kind of visual sort of mind games that it plays with you. And what I think your TARDIS did was really the first one where it became more than just a shell. With the 9th, 10th and to a degree the 11th and 12th Doctors, it's the walls are very solid, right? The walls are there, and you get doors that, well, actually we didn't see many doors that led off anywhere, but we did in the old series. And again, it was a shell. With your TARDIS, what we get is these kind of layers with that lattice work, so you get the idea there is something behind, and that whole thing maybe just kind of flows out.
And also we were kind of keen on the idea that it was still in a state of flux to an extent, so the 3 inner metal walls with the with infinity mirrors in were on tracks, and they would move around, so we could adjust them. But obviously, what happened was that they found the optimum spot for them for filming in, and then they very rarely moved. But then when Dab took over on season 2 of Jodie's time, he used one of them then to give the idea of those steps, and to extend it again out further at the back, which was one of our original ideas. Was wouldn't it be fun for the door to be in a different position every time you come in, because of what it is. But obviously, once again, it's a bit of an expense, so we didn't. But then he developed it and kept on going. And he added some really nice touches, like the vapor screens and stuff, which was again, that practical effect. Doing things for real rather than just depending on CGI.
So how many designs and different variations did you go through before you got to the final sign off and
there wasn't much in the way of different variations. It was just polishing it, really. I suppose there was different variations conceptually of how the screen, the sliding walls I was talking about, and how the outer framework kind of sat. But generally, and there was different designs of the console and how the crystals would look, and also how they would sit in the space. So that was tweaking various little elements. But as far as the actual overall thing, not much. It was just polishing it till we got to the kind of version that we went with. I was very lucky that everyone trusted me to carry on with it, really. Yeah. And then when we had the reveal, it was quite nice. There was various members of the editorial team that did cry on the day when we showed them the first time, which is quite nice.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's quite an emotional thing, when something you created has that visceral effect on someone.
Were
you nervous before you before you revealed it?
I'm always nervous about all this, because I suffer terribly from imposter syndrome, and I'm just waiting for someone to actually go, "What the hell are you doing here? Get out!" For all these years. But you kind of there's little tells, it's like when I took Stephen and Mark onto the 221B set for the first time. I found myself talking, nervously babbling on, and I just noticed that I'd lost them. They just wandered off already to touch things, and we're kind of playing with things and stuff.
Magpies.
And that's what you get that in the TARDIS. People go in and they stop this. They just get, they're into look at this and go and look at that, and there's so much to actually take your eye, and if that happens, you've kind of done your job.
You've done it, yeah. So we've got a couple of questions from Twitter here for you. So Scouse Fish Custard asks. Well, actually, we kind of answered that one for them. Actually,
I think we've done that.
Yeah, they wanted to know how long the final look took. So Ollie, who's the gay one too on Twitter, says, "What would the corridors on Jodie's TARDIS have looked like?"
Assuming there would have been corridors.
Yeah, if you built any.
Well, I suppose it would have been a similar vibe to the outer walls. You'd kind of done, I suppose, like threads out of those emanating outwards from that internal thing. If I was going to extrapolate on that, if that thing existed within the time vortex, just within a cage as opposed to solid walls, then you would have to do a similar thing to Wander Away and layers, I suppose.
Yeah, that would have looked quite cool.
I like that. Yeah.
So. James on Twitter asks if you had any specific ideas that didn't make it to screen.
Yeah, well, I think I've answered that as well. And I'm going to claim that I invented the volume before Disney did. Yes. Okay.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
So we've got a question. So how come we only saw the custard cream dispenser?
Oh yes, once? I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, I think you don't want to see the Doctor munching on a biscuit all the time, but it was like that.
Why not?
That was when I mentioned, when I got to go and see the regeneration. I heard Jodie speak to one of the runners about asking if they had any custard creams to go with her tea, because that was her favourite biscuit, and that's the moment I had the idea, because I'd already started designing the TARDIS. I had no idea until everyone else did on the TV reveal that she was the Doctor. So I started designing the TARDIS as a Doctor's TARDIS. It wasn't specifically Jodie's. So I just wanted to put something in there that was specific to her. And no one else knew about it at all until the day we did the reveal. And I took her on the TARDIS. And
I've seen the video of you taking her around.
And I said, put your foot on that. And then she did. And it was like, that was genuinely... It wasn't a setup. It was, we didn't rehearse it or anything. It was just that moment.
Yeah,
quite nice.
such a cool little touch. I love it. It was brilliant.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's these little character things that make it personal,
Yeah.
that make it more warming, and it's really good like that. Well, one of the other things I really enjoyed about this particular TARDIS is the kind of continuity of the aesthetic. For example, between, like you said, with the time crystals and also the sonic screwdriver as well, which I think you also designed.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a very good concept artist with me on Doctor Who, Darren Faraday. So it was, and there was various inputs from the guys at the CGI company, and we had various different things. Everyone wanted, as you can imagine, wanted to have a little pop at the Sonic. But I started doing some early sketches way before I had a script to know that she was actually going to be making it in Sheffield.
Yeah.
So I played with this idea of it. There was a few things I wanted to play with. They were feeling more alien, and that was the other thing with the TARDIS itself as well. I wanted the tech in general to feel alien, not earthbound.
Yeah,
and it feels alive as well in there.
Definitely.
Yeah, and therefore, once we started going down the road, the time crystal, therefore, crystals had were a source of power of some sort. So then, the only element that was alien in that workshop was the spaceship, and we had this row of crystals that were powering it. So we deliberately did that so that she could take one of those as the emitter for the end.
Yeah.
And also, using the Sheffield steel from the cutlery, there is a little, there's a lovely little detail in it. If you ever see the real thing, that there's the bottom end of a fork or a spoon that hasn't quite melded, that has made in Sheffield still stamped on it.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Just to have that little thing. And also to the idea that it's not like, I didn't want to be like just soldering electronics, it wanted to feel like we were trying to fuse and control this immense power, which is why it went to, big flame welding and massive hammers and so it's just trying to fuse and contain this power within something. And also it's a screwdriver, right? So I wanted it to turn,
Yeah. It's
most screwdrivers these days they turn. They don't just.
Yes,
they
do, don't they? Yeah, you don't have to turn your hand. It does it for you. Yeah.
But it looks very organic as well. It's got a very organic kind of symmetry to it, or asymmetry, I suppose.
And also asymmetry, but also the whole idea was that it fitted in your hand. It wasn't just a straight thing. So it actually fits into your palm. That's the shape of it. It actually fits. It fits the curve of the pad of your hand.
Yeah, it's my favourite Sonic because of the way the Doctor built it, but it looks so alien and organic as well. It really stands out from the others. I think it looks great. Yeah,
and it's orange. There's a lot of orange here as well. We're talking about which is a nice warming colour.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah. And when we were prepping all this and we were talking about it, the world that was being created from big shows and from big movies was, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 would just come out when we were starting to prep. Very, very big, colourful, lots of golds, big colours. And these were the kind of shows that we wanted to be stood up against. Not just be seen as this quirky British show that was deliberately shaky sets and all that. We tried to get away from all that for years. So it was trying, and the whole production, they went to a 2:1 aspect ratio to give it a bit even wider. And, they went to anamorphic lenses to give it a real filmy quality. So that moment for that Ghost Monument when she's running, it really feels like a moment from a film, doesn't it? It's phenomenal.
Yeah, the whole era, the show never looked better. The production values were through the roof on it. It just the whole thing looked incredible.
And they were already good, but it seemed like they just stepped up a good few notches. It is truly cinematic.
Yeah, well, this is why we're all, everyone that loves the show and is are really excited about the next stage now, with Russell back at the helm, but also with this Disney money and everything. Where can he take it? It should be amazing.
Yeah. But get the volume in. That's what they'll do.
Yeah.
I can see it. You will realise, your dreams will be realised, Oliver.
So we've got a question from Katie Haynes on Twitter here. And she says, and we're asking this as well, really, how can we get a piece of the TARDIS? So we know that Ray Holman's got a piece in his garden. He tweeted a picture you might have seen of some flowers in his garden, and there was a little bit of one of the the roundels in shot.
Yeah.
I thought,
unfortunately, most of it's been thrown away, I believe. I might have
no.
I might have your piece here and there, but yes. It's the nature of what we do, and I used to have a real problem with striking shows because I didn't like the destructive elements, and until someone actually said something to me, and I was like, well, they've served their purpose. And that's quite true. The purpose is to tell the story, and once it's been filmed, it's kind of, I suppose, lasts forever, right? So,
well, it does in a way, but
in a way. So I kind of made my peace with it, because I always love the creative elements as you're creating and adding and creating, and then that moment where it gets taken away is like it's a bit difficult. But now I'm a bit more at ease with it all.
I remember
because now you're creating something new, I suppose, aren't you?
Yeah, we're off to something new, but also you've got to make room for something new all the time as well. So you've got to kind of, and once it's served its purpose, then as do we all. We make great.
Yeah, I remember watching a time lapse of Peter Capaldi's TARDIS getting taken apart, and I don't think I watched it all. I can't. It's too much. So, the idea of something getting dismantled like that is quite sad. But yeah, I think you're right. It served its purpose, and it will live on
and it lives on forever.
And in books and all of that. Yeah. So when you moved on from the show in Series 11, you went on to Dracula. Did you miss working on the show, and did you keep in touch with people and have any other?
My long term collaborator, art director David Schirmer, stayed on as designer, and so we kind of, it was like a divorce, I suppose. He kept some of the kids, I kept some of the others. So we were very closely linked. So I would often talk to him about stuff. You're always, it's the kind of show. Even before I went back for Series 11, I still had links with different people that worked on the show all the way through Peter's era. And Matt's. I did a few of Matt's episodes, but generally I think I did 4 out of all of his run. So, but I knew people that were involved. So you've always got a link to it in a way.
Yeah. So alongside the TARDIS interior, what episode or particular sets were your favourites to have designed on your time on the show?
The various ones for different things, I suppose. The Pating episode was that spaceship was quite nice because
that set is gorgeous. It's so
and Dav, I think that's where I lost Dav really, because he was as a supervisor and art director, you kind of get embroiled a lot in the getting things done as opposed to the artistic side of it. And we just went, well, do you want to have a little bit more? So he set that episode. Right. You can see a lot of his elements in that, but there was some great sets inside that spaceship, and we built quite a lot of the corridors and stuff, so you could actually wander around for real, and we deliberately did that.
Oh wow!
Had that S in it so that you could repeat the same corridor with very, very quick changes, and we had projectors in there, which meant we could change the graphics quickly onto what was seen on the wall. So it worked really well. You could stand in it and take photos with your phone, and it felt real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I think it's just astonishing. One thing I really liked about that is the fact that we'd seen a lot of very sort of industrial-looking, grungy rust bucket type spaceships, which is great, and I love all that.
Didn't we?
But in the Saranga Conundrum, suddenly we get this gleaming white, futuristic 2001 Close Encounters, bright, shiny. And it's nice to switch between back and forth of those.
That's the thing.
I can imagine.
To get those kind of finishes on those kind of budgets.
And wasn't that episode? That episode was quite a last-minute script, I think, wasn't it? That Chris wrote.
Yes, things do tend to get last minute, but we get the heads up as to what we're doing quite early. You have to think on your feet a little bit in order to adapt things. Sometimes if something changes in the script, but. We knew we needed to do a hospital ship, essentially, which is what it was.
Yeah.
So that's why it necessitated it being clean, crisp, generally white.
Hospital type environment.
Yes. Am I getting the episode right? Demons of the Punjab, right? The spaceship, and that was we had some more fun with that. Because just making that was like. Is this going to work? that, just getting the scale of those walls and everything.
Yeah,
cool.
because it's tall, isn't it? Or the impression is that it's tall with all the
and also,
graphics and the faces.
It's a dangerous thing to play with as well, because obviously our medium is wide, so it's difficult to show height. But it kind of worked for that. That one.
I think it worked beautifully.
It
because you've got colours within that as well, with the sort of neons and the graphics, and there is a colour scheme. There's a palette to it, sort of turquoisey with a bit more orange. It works. It's beautiful looking episode. I love it to bits.
Yeah, the Saranga Conundrum, that set is great, and also I really love the Pating. He's like
you love that little fella, don't you, Jeff?
Do you know Stitch from the Disney films? He's like the really bad version of Stitch.
Yeah,
he's brilliant. Yeah.
So, but also completely innocent. That's the just that. And then there was a moment, and they captured it beautifully, because we were talking about this, and we were talking about like that. And there's a thing where you're talking to you're talking about your kids. When you're talking to a toddler, especially a toddler, right? And you're telling them, don't do that, and they're reaching for something, and they're just staring at you. They stare you out as they still do it, and they keep doing it, and they're staring at you, and they're still doing it, and you go, don't you dare, and they still go and do exactly what you're telling.
Yeah,
that's what we were trying to kind of capture, and I think the thing really encapsulated it.
Yeah, actually, I showed my particularly my boy, but the girls saw it as well. I showed them the bit with the Pating where it takes the Sonic and then burps, and they gross. But they all laughed, and they loved it, and it's that kind of thing that it reminds you that the show can appeal to so many people in different ages and stuff like that. And my one of the twins particularly, she always likes kind of the ugly little things and stuff, like Dobby, Dobby in Harry Potter, or a little worm thing that wears a scarf in Labyrinth, and the Pating, anything that's kind of fugly, she's there for it.
Love it.
Which is quite good, really. Yeah. So, tell us a bit more about working on Sarah Jane Adventures, and working with Liz, because that must have been.
That was incredible. I mean, she was brilliant. To be honest, she was amazing, and just a joy. And honestly, one of my favourite times is David and her on set. Right, that you will never get a more professional and nicer pair at the same time. Anyway, it was just, and also David was, you could tell that it was overjoyed to just have it there. But Sarah Jane was great for us, because most of the team that went on to do Sarah Jane had been working on Doctor Who in some form or other. So we were trying to keep within that Who universe, but with a vastly reduced, kids BBC budget. So we had to be creative, very creative. But sometimes that means it brings out the best. Sometimes, the Copper spaceship I made. I think Russell, to this day, still says that it was his favourite spaceship of all the ones we had in Upper Boat. And I used real copper sheets for a lot of that, because people were going, well, how the hell do you do that? But I was going, well, it's cheaper than actually getting a painter to stand there and paint and do it all. So and you get the curve and you get the kick and everything. And then the other one, we made an entire spaceship from stretched out tensile fabric. And just, once again, I suppose that was an early version of what we did with the TARDIS. Is that you get shapes within a dark space and let it go off. So we played with all sorts of ideas. It kind of forces your hand in a way.
What's one of the strangest things that you've used in a set design as a prop, or to build it? Or
that's a good question, Jeff. Inspired, mate.
I think maybe I was just going to say that the little Sontaran spaceship that we had.
Okay.
I thought you were going to ask me what's the strangest thing I've done, and I was kind of carrying that whole spaceship into.
We can do that one for next.
Into the forest on the front of a forklift with everyone watching. Which was quite an interesting event. But I did have. I did actually automate that door. It had garage door openers that you could use remotes for. Weirdly.
Brilliant.
Literally in the middle of a forest going, and it would go. It was quite slow, but it would go, And then you go, bloop, then you go back up again.
Oh, brilliant.
So, what are you working on at the moment?
I've just finished an adaptation of a book called Black Kate,
Oh,
which is a bestseller in the States, based around the life of a young girl from Jamaica who has to escape a forced marriage in Jamaica when she's 17. Escapes to the UK. Various things happen here, and then they eventually, her and the love of her life end up in the United States and make a life there and have a family. And then on her deathbed, actually, she has died and left a little memory stick with her lawyer that he then is playing to her grown-up kids who have no idea of her past, and we kind of get to see her past unravel in front of our eyes as do they.
Okay.
Which is quite nice. Yeah, very, very good. Got
Quite
to be
different to do something.
very different. Yeah,
grounded.
got to do a bit of filming in Jamaica, some in the States, most of it in South Wales, pretending to be other places again, as I do.
Yeah.
Very interesting and new challenges, which is always good. You know.
Yeah. It keeps it
do you
fresh.
have a preference for the sort of fantastical versus the real, or you just take whatever comes on?
Do you know, it's the weird thing is that whatever's different, right, is the best. So if you've been doing fantasy for a while, it's nice to do something more.
Switch over,
yeah. And I think that's one of the joys of Doctor Who is that you're always doing something different.
You get it's different every week, isn't it?
You know, it's both frustrating and it's joy because you never get to kind of do it to its fullness as you'd like, or you know, to the extent of what your budgets allow you and stuff to go for the period stuff, or even for the sci-fi fantasy stuff. So it's nice to do a show where you can go full blown on something, but then you kind of want your next one to be something different.
Yeah,
and it's easy to get pigeonholed, you know. So it's it's kind of nice to be allowed to do different stuff. Really.
Well, Doctor Who will help in that way, won't it? Because there's been so much,
so expansive.
so much variety.
And you get to play with everything. Yeah. But then, you know, also like you said, you know, people pause and look and go, look at everything that's wrong. So rather than you tend, I suppose as a television show goes, it's kind of jack of all trades and master of none.
I don't know if that's particularly true.
No.
You know, it's just so much to it, isn't there? Yeah. You know, you got the historical stuff. You can do period drama. You can set dress all the nice little Victorian stuff.
You can do all that, but you're doing it to a much smaller budget than a show that's dedicated to doing that.
Yeah,
so it's easier to pick holes in it. I mean, and then someone who's actually considering you to do a big show, they go, well, they didn't do that very well, or they didn't do it right. You know, it's a balance. It is a balance.
So I suppose, like with Upstairs and Downstairs, where it is specifically within that time period.
Yeah.
That's that kind of thing.
Yes.
Because you worked on that as well, didn't you?
I did the second series of that, yeah.
That was it. Yeah. So again, it's a wide portfolio that you've got now, isn't it?
Quite a wide varied.
Yeah.
And Dracula's Castle to boot, you know. I mean, that's
and then
that's
the
not
last
too
thing
bad.
we did with Hansford as well, Inside Man, which was a rectory in England and a death row in the States, which was quite nice to do next door to each other as well.
So, what's next? Are you still working on the show that you've been on at the moment, or have you got a break?
Literally just been finishing. So yeah, I'm still involved somewhat a little bit in post production. Not committed to anything yet. Next, we'll see.
Do you think you might go back to Who at some point in some capacity?
They have to ask me. I don't know. I mean, they've got a brand new team doing wonderful things. So I'm not. You know, I'm quite excited to be on the other side and watch what comes. Yeah.
Actually, I suppose just on that must put a slightly different colour on things when you're watching these programmes, because you will notice perhaps all the little things that you didn't quite do, or things that are wrong, or do you not?
Well, I'm terrible to go to the cinema with. I know that a lot of people won't even go there with me anymore, and I don't even have to say anything. They'll just hear me touch or breathe too heavily or something.
And then that's it, right?
What now? What's wrong with that?
What's the matter? It's fine. I can take it.
Yeah.
So what would be a dream project for you? Like, you know, what would be something you'd really love to?
I suppose Star Wars is the one that would, you know, is one of the ones I remember seeing Star Wars on VHS when I was very small. So, that's something. But then, the joy of that is that it's a Western in space, and Westerns were my kind of big love as a kid as well. So, I would love to do a Western. I've never done anything to do with a Western. I'd love to do a Western, but also I would love to be involved in one of those big franchises. I love the comic book films, all of them, DC and Marvel, and especially the Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know? Sorry, Paul. I was just to say, there's a little Western village based near where I am here in West Sussex.
Is there?
Yeah, did I tell you about this? And
is that Guildford?
Horsham. No, it's a proper. They've got the.
This town ain't big enough for the both of us, boy. I only came here to see the Shakespeare.
They've got a jail and a saloon and
walking through
grave,
the Friars Centre, Spurs jangling. Sorry,
the whole works. And we did a little bit of filming there a couple of years ago, and this place was sort of been like a bit of a myth. People would be like. Do you know there's a Western village around here? No?
Yeah, right.
This, and there was a sign.
Fully other one.
Yeah, but no one believed us, and we found out who owned it and stuff, and we got to go film there. It was really cool, and I was like, damn, I wish we had the whole day here to shoot more stuff in it. It was really fun.
When we did the first scout because we went to Spain to do some of the location work for Demons of the Punjab. And we were in the first areas we were looking at is where they used to shoot the spaghetti westerns. And the village is still there as a tourist attraction, Yeah. So we went, we've got to stick our heads in, and it's one of the most surreal moments of my life because they've got these things, they've got shows that they run. So we just stuck our heads in to have a look, and then before we knew it, we were sat down in the saloon with these guys. Shouting at each other in Spanish and shooting, and we had no idea what was going on. People were thrown at the tables and all sorts of things. Really, what the hell? Yeah, this feels like a Doctor Who episode. I don't really know what's going on.
Oh, that's brilliant. What would the young you say if he could see what you've done now, what you've achieved, and where you are?
I don't know.
That's a deep philosophical
it's a deep
question.
Because when I started on Doctor Who, I remember, kind of remembering it as a kid and stuff, and kind of. I think for me, it was when Tom Baker finished, I kind of lost interest, and that was my kind of thing. But whilst I was working on it, I got some stuff sent to me from home, and in the middle of it was a photo pack of a film that I had taken on a holiday in Blackpool, and most of it was the Doctor Who exhibition in Blackpool.
Brilliant! I remember that well.
Yeah, and I was kind of going, I think I was about 9 or 10 when I took those photos, and I was looking at them going, and one of them was the Time Lord's collars, and we were at that time we were doing that first episode with David and the Master. And the flashbacks too, and we borrowed these collars. So we had the collars in the prop store, and I had these photos that I'd taken of them from 25 years previously, It was kind of quite surreal, and it made me realise that actually I had much more of a love for the show than I could remember. So I think he'd be quite proud. Of me, and maybe going, how the hell did you get so fat?
Oh, that is brilliant. That's excellent. And I don't have many more questions.
No,
I've
got one more for you. What advice would you give, Arwel, to anyone who wants to get into film and TV, whether it's production design?
Just keep knocking on the door until someone gives you an opening, and then make the most of it.
Yeah, there's got to be a persistence to it, hasn't it?
There's got to be a persistence. Don't make a nuisance of yourself, but be persistent until someone gives you a chance, and just be memorable. Don't sit in a corner. Just be willing to help anyone. That's it. Having someone that's there, just helping you move something, or just tidying up as you're doing something. Just those small little things. Some people, when you can see what needs doing, rather than you have to ask someone to do it.
Yeah, it's been a step ahead of it, isn't it?
Invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant.
I think that's great advice, isn't it? We always like to get advice from our celebrity guests within the business, because I suppose we do have people, out there who engage with the show, who are looking, to make their first step into a dream job, something they really want to do. So it's kind of heartening to hear your stories.
I just did the Gala for One out in LA. It's the second one I've done, and it's always a joy to actually speak to people that love the show. But there was the most moving thing that happened to me there was this young lady came to speak to me about her and her twin sister. They were in college studying to become set designers, and she claimed wholeheartedly because of my work. And it was one of the most kind of, that is incredible.
That's fantastic.
Right?
That's
better
awesome.
than anything I've built.
Yeah, to know you've inspired someone.
Yeah,
your work.
It really moved me. It was quite nice.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic, because there is a real solid emotional involvement or engagement with I mean, that sounds quite cold, but we do become attached to the programs we watch. It's a deep emotional thing, and to hear that is unsurprising and lovely. It really is. So it must be pretty good, I think. Yeah. But humbling, perhaps, as well. That's where I was trying to get to.
No, very humbling. It kind of puts everything in perspective a bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Have you been to many more conventions? Or have you got plans to go to more?
I've done a couple of Sherlock ones over the years, and I've done Gallifrey twice. I've done a couple, but not massive. But I'd love to just go as a hunter to the big San Diego Comic Con. To be honest, I'd love to.
The Comic Cons would be good.
But
can I?
I was to say we should go, Paul. We'd have to mask up because we're so famous, but
exactly. Yeah. I'd have to go dressed as a ting or something like that.
I'd pay to see that.
You should do a couple of live podcasts from Galley next year.
Yeah, we who did we speak to that had been there? There was a couple of our listeners who went this year, wasn't there?
I can't remember.
And Lauren Cornelius was going, wasn't she? She does a lot of Big Finish stuff. So maybe we'll see if we can get ourselves along to another, one of the London cons this year.
Yeah, that's a little bit cheaper for us, isn't it? Unless we can find a sponsor willing to pay the fare and the accommodation and your massive expenses bill that you're likely to run up, Jeff, because I know you, mate.
I think if I said to my wife, can I go to LA for a Doctor Who convention for a few days?
See how that's going to go.
I asked her if I could go to Vegas to see U2 this year, and she told me to do one, so I'm not sure LA is going to fly either. So. But maybe something in London. Yeah, but that would be good. Yeah.
Are you quite a sci-fi comic book type fan?
Yeah, so I used to love comic books as a kid. So and also not just the Batman, I suppose, was the kind of big one. But I used to like the Iron Fists and the slightly less well-known ones as well.
What's been your favourite Marvel and or DC film of the last couple of years?
Ooh.
Both on an enjoyment level and a production level.
I think that one of my I was interviewed for the first season of Upstairs Downstairs, and one of the questions was, what inspires you for design? And I think they were expecting me to say something that was period, and I just went, Iron Man 1. It's incredible. Which was in the wrong space at the wrong time, and needless to say, I didn't get the job. But that first Iron Man I changed the game, I think.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
We're a big fan of the Marvel films, aren't we, Jeff?
Yeah,
and the DC films. Well, you're not so much a big fan.
No, not so much DC for me, but I love Marvel stuff. Yeah, and before we started our Doctor Who podcast, we ran a Marvel one during lockdown. Both going a bit stir crazy, and Paul said he'd never really watched many Marvel films. And
I hadn't.
I couldn't believe this sacrilege, and I said, you got to get on them. And then I think it was you, Paul. You said, "Why don't we do a podcast where you're watching for the first time and I'm watching for the millionth?" And so kind of grew from there. And then when we got to the end of the Marvel films that were out at the time, we said, "This is fun. Let's carry on. Why don't we do Doctor Who?" Because that's how we met on Twitter and stuff. So we carried on. So we do get people saying you need to pick up your Marvel one and get that going.
We do,
But I've really enjoyed all of the stuff. Really, I saw Ant-Man: Quantumania recently, which was kind of silly fun, but some
Yeah,
fantastic
it's silly fun, but I think it's to when you think that 90% of that film is CG, I think they've managed to keep it relatively character based and stuff. It's a very difficult thing to do when there's nothing real in frame. And
it must be hard for the actors.
I mean, it's never going to be a classic because of that. I think. And also you're introducing a brand new supervillain and all that kind of thing. But,
and I think you're right, because a lot of the things with these films is there's action in them and things, but if you don't care about the characters, none of it really matters.
The action doesn't mean anything.
And with Ant-Man, there was a lot of green screen, and you see people moan about it on Twitter, and I think, will you tell me how they're going to achieve that otherwise? To look good. But Paul Rudd is so likeable, and Michelle Pfeiffer and the daughter and stuff, and Kang was amazing. He was so chilling, and
he's a great actor, isn't he?
Oh, he is, yeah, and he could well be a Thanos level villain across all of this, and I really enjoyed it. And Wakanda Forever I thought was excellent as well. Very moving. I just saw, it's a bit different, but I saw Scream last week, the new one.
Oh yeah.
And that's obviously much more kind of grounded and real. But they kept saying online they shot it in Montreal. And it's set in New York, and you could tell, they said it's really obviously Montreal, but I didn't know. So, they hoodwinked me. But that was good. I really enjoyed that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is out soon, isn't it? So
yes.
That's going to be up next, isn't it? Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
John Wick 4 next week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, John Wick 4. Yeah.
That's just out and out, like...
It's just unapologetic about what it is, It's like it's fantastic.
Films should be fun sometimes. You're going to be entertained, and I know with John Wick I'm going to get outrageous stunts and fight choreography, and Keanu being a badass, and that's enough for me. I'm not looking for, I'm not looking for some deep philosophical, life-changing moment in it. I just want.
You're not looking for everything everywhere all at once, Jeff.
I'm not. No, I'm just looking for him to
See what I did there?
sword fighting on his motorbike, or whatever he gets up to this time.
Have you seen that sequence from the film that I was based on? Is it The Huntress? I think it's a. I think I'm gonna get this wrong. It's either Korean or Japanese. It's a film from out east. Where there's a whole sequence of fighting with samurai swords on motorbikes in a tunnel, and it is
really
bonkers. It's bonkers. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to have a look for that. Yeah, they're so well directed, and there's a spin-off coming as well with Anna de Armas, I think.
Oh yes.
Norman Reedus from Walking Dead's in it, and Keanu's doing a cameo, so that should be good.
So. You're a fan of Keanu,
yeah,
aren't you?
I do like Keanu.
You do like Keanu.
Yeah. So
there you go. There's ideas for another podcast.
That's it. I don't think there's a single bad thing you can say about Keanu Reeves. I think I read a story about him being taken on one of those either car or one of those electric buggies to a soundstage, and they pulled up outside, and he jumped out of the vehicle, clapped his hands, and went, "Come on, we're making movies," and still, and that's what I think he embodies that whole kind of the love of still doing what he does, and I think that's brilliant.
I think that's
and I think whilst you love doing what you do and you have fun doing what you do, I think it comes out on screen. I think we try doing that in our work all the time. And I think it shows.
I like it when people are passionate about the work they do, and whether it's costume work or actors or whatever, and with some actors, you can tell that it's just a job, and particularly with comic stuff, they're not that into it maybe, but then when you've got, Hugh Jackman, who's, mad for it to be Wolverine, I love that passion that they have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's some lovely bits in there. I was talking about Keanu, and I was watched it, the Dracula version that he was in, obviously, and Anthony Hopkins might not have been enjoying himself so much in that one. There, you can actually see him look down to find his mark, and then look up and says the lines, and then leaves. There's the moment where maybe he didn't feel it that time.
Just collecting my fee, darlings. Oh dear. So we've had a good idea of your favourite films over the last 3 years. Then it's John Wick 4 is the next thing you're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Anything else on a?
Oh, I think they've extended out the when a lot of the Marvel things are coming out now. They're spreading them out over the next 2 years.
Yeah, slowed it
Yeah,
down
I always
a little
look
bit.
forward to these. It's nice to see what's coming next. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with DC now.
Oh yes,
New direction.
I must say,
So that's quite cool.
Now that James Gunn's in charge.
Yes, exactly. I really loved what he did with Suicide Squad 2. So yeah, that's as close as I've seen to a comic book on screen.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah, there's moments in that where where it literally does look like a comic panel.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It is. You can see where they've taken elements of it, can't you? Particularly when all the starfishes start coming down and stuff.
The frame where King Shark rips the guy in half.
Yeah.
It literally is like a panel from a
panel from a
There's something joyful about that.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
it is. It's enjoying your source, isn't it?
That's it. You
not
can tell
not being
that
apologetic
passion,
about it,
exactly.
which I think a lot of the kind of naysayers of genre films of that type, they're like, well, it's not serious art and it's not proper film and all that. They're forgetting the joy of it.
Yeah, that's it.
My favourite Batman movie is still Batman Returns.
Yes, I love Batman Returns.
Yes.
Tim Burton can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned, anyway. But that feels like a gothic city. That's Gotham. These days,
isn't it?
Oh, that's New York. It is literally the opposite of what you were saying about New York and Montreal. You're kind of looking and going, "That's New York. That's not."
That's it. Chicago, whatever.
It's a great film, that one. Yeah.
Saying that, I did really enjoy the last Batman film, The Batman.
But is that a Batman film or is that a vigilante film?
Ooh, I don't know. See, I thought it sort of took Batman back to his roots as a detective. Batman is a detective in that. And there's also that first bit where he comes out of the shadows and which actually Snyder did in his Batman film as well. When Batman first comes out and it's all just moves like something supernatural. And with Pattinson, it's like he steps out on a subway, doesn't he? And you hear the boots. And all the hoods start to crap themselves. And it's good. I enjoyed it anyway.
I think Tim Burton did that originally, didn't he? Anyway,
Tim Burton can do no wrong. I'm a big fan of Tim Burton. I
love
love his two Batman films. I wish he'd done a third one.
Me too.
He was talking about doing a third one, but couldn't. He didn't want to. The studio wanted him to, and they couldn't get anything that really excited him. He wanted to move on to other projects, but at least for those two films, they are absolutely astonishingly really good. Even now, they hold up well. I'm a big fan of those.
It's really nice to see Keaton back, but it feels like he's inadvertently been wasted in The Flash by it being...
You haven't seen it yet, Jeff.
No, I haven't.
It hasn't been out yet. Now, forget all the rumours, forget all the chatter, watch it and make your own mind up, my friend.
I think either way, they're not carrying on with any of that stuff.
Stop.
Wasted.
You're talking to someone who is actually a Snyder fan. Admittedly, I'm not a Bible-carrying cultish version, but I do like the Snyder films.
We haven't even talked about Avatar yet. Oh, well, that's...
No! I thought we were going to get to the end of a podcast without an Avatar reference. No! We might as well do that. Yeah. Have you seen Avatar?
Yes. I went to the premiere, the BAFTA premiere, because I'm a member of BAFTA. I get to go to a few premieres and stuff. So yes, nice. I went to see it on the big screen.
Fantastic!
What a film! Yeah, I loved it. Both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, it's one of those where there's a lot of pixels on screen, and it holds up. So
yeah, absolutely, because it's about character, and. I found it very moving. I find anything now with kind of kids and family really gets me, And at the end of the film, a few rows in front of me, a woman stood up, and she turned to people behind her. Maybe they were her friends or something. She said, "I've been crying for the last half an hour." And you're right. Even though it's pixels, it's still powered by people and performance, and it really moved people. So I love it. Paul, have you got to go?
I do. Okay. I've got my 15-year-old daughter waiting outside a pub for me to pick her up. So
you should add. She's not been in the pub. She's been at college.
No, she's not. She's just waiting outside it.
She's
you better be quick.
Better go there before anything happens. So, Arwel, it has been such an absolute pleasure to talk to you on the podcast.
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And sharing your stories with us. And we're looking forward to what you're going to do next.
Look forward to it. And thank you for everything you contributed to Doctor Who. We
Definitely.
love it. It's
thank you, guys. It's been a joy. Thanks.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing what you do next.